Part one, if you have already seen it, you know that it covered the arrest and trial of Jesus in two passages from Mark and two passages from Matthew. We're going in the order that the Gospels were written. And now, of course, we're going to take on Luke and John, or as the Catholics say, or in the King James Bible, the Gospel according to St. Luke and the Gospel according to St. John. This is a lot more verbose. I don't know off the top of my head which one seemed more verbose as I was copying it, Luke or John, but there is none of that leanness that we enjoyed in the Gospel of Mark. So let's start with Luke. That's the third synoptic gospel. Mark, Matthew, Luke. Synoptic in Greek means seen together. Although, as you're going to see when we look at the passages in John, it's not so different. It has a different theology, but a lot of the stories are the same. And I was surprised at how familiar these passages from Luke seemed compared to what we just looked at in Mark and Matthew. All right, got to get ready for the King James Version. Boy, Microsoft Word hates so many of these words. They just can't deal with a comma where they don't need a comma, let alone words such as spake. But we can deal with it. It's similar to what you would read through William Shakespeare. And while he yet spake, behold, a multitude, and he that was called Judas, one of the 12, went before them and drew near unto Jesus to kiss him. But Jesus said unto him, Judas, betrayest thou the Son of Man with a kiss? When they which were about him saw what would follow, they said unto him, Lord, shall we smite with the sword? And one of them smote the servant of the high priest, and cut off his right ear. And Jesus answered and said, Suffer ye thus far. And he touched his ear, and healed him. Then Jesus said unto the chief priests, and captains of the temple, and the elders, which were come to him, Be ye come out as against a thief, with swords and staves. When I was daily with you in the temple, ye stretched forth no hands against me. But this is your hour, and the power of darkness. Then took they him, and led him, and brought him into the high priest's house. And Peter followed afar off. So you can see how Luke has changed things around, but he has not given up on a lot of basic ideas, the swords and the staves. But it's both similar and different. When somebody pulls out a sword, it's still just one of them. I think in John we're going to get a particular disciple, but one of them cuts off the ear, but now it's well, I think later we're going to see this person is related to the high priest, but only in this one so far has Jesus healed anybody. He touched his ear and healed him. And it's strange how when you're a believer in an inerrant Bible, or even just someone who went to a mainline church, you tend to remember this one. You know, we tend to select the most amazing detail. Not just that an ear was cut off, but then Jesus, of course, healed it. Well, that's not how Mark or Matthew put it. But again, Peter is following afar off, and a lot of the details about the fire are going to come back, and we're going to have Peter deny Jesus, but all right, one thing at a time. So we're doing Luke chapter 22. These are a lot of verses, 47 through 71. Let's keep it going. Yeah, I guess I just predicted the fire. And when they had kindled the fire in the midst of the hall and were set down together, Peter sat down among them. But a certain maid beheld him as he sat by the fire, and earnestly looked upon him, and said, This man was also with him. And he denied him, saying, Woman, I know him not. And after a little while another saw him, and said, Thou art also of them. And Peter said, Man, I am not. And about the space of 1 hour after another confidently affirmed, saying, Of a truth this fellow also was with him, for he is a Galilean. And Peter said, Man, I know not what thou sayest. And immediately, while he yet spake, the cock crew, and the Lord turned and looked upon Peter. Ooh, that's the best version of that so far. And Peter remembered the word of the Lord, how he had said unto him, Before the cock crow, thou shalt deny me thrice. And Peter went out and wept bitterly. And the men that held Jesus mocked him and smote him. And when they had blindfolded him, they struck him on the face and asked him, saying, Prophesy, who is it that smote thee? I hate those guys. And many other things blasphemously spake they against him. And as soon as it was day, the elders of the people and the chief priests and the scribes came together and led him into their council, saying, Art thou the Christ? Tell us. And he said unto them, If I tell you, ye will not believe. And if I also ask you, ye will not answer me, nor let me go. Hereafter shall the Son of Man sit on the right hand of the power of God. Then said they all, Art thou then the Son of God? And he said unto them, Ye say that I am. And they said, What need we any further witness? For we ourselves have heard of his own mouth. Never understood the way he talks to these people at this time. I mean, that does kind of support the idea that he was a sacrifice and he was planning on doing all this, because otherwise I don't see why you would answer that. You say that I am. That's a yes or no question. Art thou the Son of the God? No, I'm the Son of Man. Oh, good. Then we don't have to kill you, because we don't know what that means either. And the whole multitude of them arose and led him unto Pilate, and they began to accuse him, saying, We found this fellow perverting the nation. Is that what he was doing? And forbidding to give tribute to Caesar, saying that he himself is Christ a king. Ooh, that's sedition. And Pilate asked him, saying, Art thou the king of the Jews? And he answered him and said, Thou sayest it. Oh, this is Pilate. Then said Pilate to the chief priest and to the people, I find no fault in this man. And they were the more fierce, saying, He stirreth up the people, teaching throughout all Jewry, beginning from Galilee to this place. When Pilate heard of Galilee, he asked whether the man were a Galilean. And as soon as he knew that he belonged unto Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him to Herod, who himself also was at Jerusalem at that time. And when Herod saw Jesus, he was exceeding glad, for he was desirous to see him of a long season, because he had heard many things of him, and he hoped to have seen some miracle done by him. Then he questioned with him in many words, but he answered him nothing. Can't get Jesus to talk. And the chief priests and scribes stood and vehemently accused him. And Herod with his men of war set him at naught and mocked him, and arrayed him in a gorgeous robe, and sent him again to Pilate. And the same day Pilate and Herod were made friends together, for before they were at enmity between themselves. And Pilate, when he had called together the chief priests and the rulers and the people, said unto them, Ye have brought this man unto me as one that perverteth the people. And behold, I, having examined him before you, have found no fault in this man touching those things whereof ye accuse him. No, nor yet Herod. For I sent you to him, and lo, nothing worthy of death is done unto him. I will therefore chastise him and release him. For of necessity he must release one unto them at the feast. And they cried out all at once, saying, Away with this man, and release unto us Barabbas, who for a certain sedition made in the city, and for murder was cast into prison. Okay, that's the most incompetent use of Barabbas. They didn't even do the scene. They just tried to put that in a parentheses. And as John Dominic Crossan would explain, anyone convicted of sedition and a violent insurrection, he and all the accomplices would be executed. But they make it into it's a gospel, it's a story. Pilate, therefore, willing to release Jesus, spake again to them. But they cried, saying, Crucify him, crucify him. And he said unto them the third time, Why, what evil hath he done? Pilate really cares about this guy. I have found no cause of death in him. I will therefore chastise him and let him go. And they were instant with loud voices, requiring that he might be crucified. And the voices of them and of the chief priests prevailed. Just a voice vote. Sick. And Pilate gave sentence that it should be as they required. And he released unto them him that for sedition and murder was cast into prison, Barabbas, whom they had desired, but he delivered Jesus to their will. Wow. All right, quick review. Man, Luke, you do go on. And while he yet spake, Judas leads him. We have the sword and stave. We have the ear being sliced off by an unnamed disciple, but here Jesus heals the ear, which is certainly nice. Again, Peter following, and as with either Mark or Matthew, he's sitting by the fire. And it's very similar. The people who are saying, Hey, you were with him. Yeah, you were. Jesus Christ Superstar handles all this stuff very well. I don't know it. Well, that's Peter. I don't know who sang the part of Peter. That's a really small one. Judas, Jesus, and Mary. Those are the singers that have a lot of work in Jesus Christ Superstar. Notice how, unlike Mark and Matthew, Pilate gets a second opinion. He's glad to hear that, oh, you're a Galilean. I can send you to Herod and see what Herod thinks. And that's one of the only songs that I could actually sing if I were to audition for a musical production of Superstar. Remember, Superstar, Jesus Christ Superstar was a record album. Uh, those two guys, what was their name? Tim Rice, the other one will come to me, but they've written a lot of famous musicals since, but they were unknown at that time. I'm surprised they got a record deal. It's like a record deal for whom? There's no artist. Yeah, they put it together, and it was the biggest selling album of 1971. Think of what they're competing with in 71. Led Zeppelin albums, Black Sabbath albums, Rolling Stone albums, a lot of big stuff. The Doors' last album, but yeah, and it came out in 1970, and then in 71 it was the biggest record. And one of my favorite songs, especially the intro, is what do they call that? Jesus goes before Herod, and Herod does a mocking song. It starts out like a folk song, and then it goes into kind of like a ragtime banjo thing. So you are the Christ, Mr. Wonderful Christ. Prove to me that you're no fool. Walk across my swimming pool. That that was the beginning was excellent too, though. Jesus, I am overjoyed to meet you face to face. You've been getting quite a name all around the place, healing cripples, raising from the dead. And now I understand you're God, at least that's what you said. So you are the Christ, Mr. Wonderful Christ. Wow. Man, they had some good music on that album. I wonder, well, it must have been an excellent uh, musical because it succeeded enough to be a musical and then they even made it into a movie. Uh, I would not recommend that movie. If you want to see a movie about Jesus and see a good one, The Last Temptation of the Christ. Director, Martin Scorsese. All right, so this is the only of the four versions where he goes to Herod for a second opinion. And then he's a jerk, right? And the chief priests and scribes stood and vehemently accused him, and Herod, with his men of war, yeah, started mocking him, put him in maybe a purple robe, and sent him back to Pilate. But Pilate's still working the same case. See, the more we make Pilate seem torn, guess where the culpability falls? Let's ask Mel Gibson. I don't want that guy in the room. Even at his age, he could probably still break my darn arm. All right. Yeah, he's still willing to release him. This one, it's not so much that the high priests are getting the crowd to do it, but they're all in on it together. It's not ridiculous that people who are, feeling hatred towards Jesus would want Barabbas released because they don't care. But Rome, somebody who committed murder in a violent insurrection, oh man. I think the only difference is if you were a Roman citizen, they would do you the courtesy of a beheading. And if you're not, it's going to be the worst thing you've ever thought of. You thought that being burned alive was bad. This could end up lasting a couple days, crucifixion. And we're going to leave your body on that cross. And anybody entering the city is going to see what happens when you challenge the authority of Rome. It's hard for us to imagine how brutal Rome really was. And they also had some really cool stuff. But crucifixion, not one of them. All right. I'm going to have to really work. All right, so that's the synoptic Luke, along with Mark and Matthew. And then there's John. And John is quite different in many ways. There's no birth narrative. In fact, his theology suggests that there was no birth, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Hmm, okay. All right, let's do some work. Judas then, having received a band of men and officers from the chief priests and Pharisees, cometh thither with lanterns and torches and weapons. Jesus, therefore, knowing all things that should come upon him. That's the first time we've heard that. Went forth and said unto them, Whom seek ye? Well, why does he have to ask? They answered him, Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus saith unto them, I am he. And Judas also, which betrayed him, stood with them. As soon then as he had said unto them, I am he, they went backward and fell to the ground. Then asked he them again, Whom seek ye? And they said, Jesus of Nazareth. Jesus answered, I have told you that I am he. If therefore ye seek me, let these go their way, that the saying might be fulfilled which he spake, Of them which thou gavest me have I lost none. I don't remember the people falling to the ground. Weird. Then Simon Peter, having a sword, drew it and smote the high priest's servant and cut off his right ear. See, now it's Simon Peter. And the other three, it was somebody. The servant's name, oh, we have a name too. The servant's name was Malchus. Sure, that means something other than just happens to be his name. Then said Jesus unto Peter, Put up thy sword into the sheath. The cup which my Father hath given me, shall I not drink it? Then the band and the captain and officers of the Jews took Jesus and bound him, and led him away to Annas first, for he was father-in-law to Caiaphas, which was the high priest that same year. Now Caiaphas was he which gave counsel to the Jews that it was expedient that one man should die for the people. Expedient. And Simon Peter followed Jesus, and so did another disciple. That disciple was known unto the high priest, and went in with Jesus into the palace of the high priest. But Peter stood at the door without. Then went out that other disciple, which was known unto the high priest, and spake unto her that kept the door, and brought in Peter. Wow, that's a sentence. Then saith the damsel that kept the door unto Peter, Art not thou also one of this man's disciples? He saith, I am not. And the servants and officers stood there, who had made a fire of coals, for it was cold, and they warmed themselves. And Peter stood with them, and warmed himself. The high priest then asked Jesus of his disciples, and of his doctrine. Jesus answered him, I spake openly to the world. I ever taught in the synagogue, and in the temple, whither the Jews always resort, and in secret have I said nothing. Why askest thou me? Ask them which heard me, what I have said unto them. Behold, they know what I said. I don't know why he can't just answer. And when he had thus spoken, one of the officers which stood by struck Jesus with the palm of his hand, saying, Answerest thou the high priest so? Jesus answered him, If I have spoken evil, bear witness of the evil. But if well, why smitest thou me? Now Annas had sent him bound unto Caiaphas the high priest, and Simon Peter stood and warmed himself. They said therefore unto him, Art not thou also one of his disciples? He denied it, said, I am not. That's what denial means. One of the servants of the high priest, being his kinsman, whose ear Peter cut off, saith, Did not I see thee in the garden with him? You don't remember the guy who sliced your ear? Peter then denied again, and immediately the cock crew. Maybe it's just crow. It looks like crew. Then led they Jesus from Caiaphas unto the hall of judgment. And it was early, and they themselves went not into the judgment hall, lest they should be defiled, but that they might eat the Passover. Pilate then went out unto them and said, What accusation bring ye against this man? They answered and said unto him, If he were not a malefactor, we would not have delivered him up unto thee. Then said Pilate unto them, Take ye him, and judge him according to your law. The Jews therefore said unto him, It is not lawful for us to put any man to death, that the saying of Jesus might be fulfilled, which he spake, signifying what death he should die. Then Pilate entered into the judgment hall again, and called Jesus, and said unto him, Art thou the king of the Jews? Jesus answered him, Sayest thou this thing of thyself, or did others tell it thee of me? Pilate answered, Am I a Jew? Thine own nation and the chief priests have delivered thee unto me. What hast thou done? Jesus answered, My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight, that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now is my kingdom not from hence. Pilate therefore said unto him, Art thou a king then? Jesus answered, Thou sayest that I am a king. To this end was I born, and for this cause came I into the world, that I should bear witness unto the truth. Every one that is of the truth heareth my voice. Pilate saith unto him, What is truth? And when he had said this, he went out again unto the Jews, and saith unto them, I find in him no fault at all. But ye have a custom, that I should release unto you one at the Passover. Will ye therefore that I release unto you the King of the Jews? Then cried they all again, saying, Not this man, but Barabbas. Now Barabbas was a robber. The other one said he was a murderer and seditionist. Then Pilate therefore took Jesus and scourged him. And the soldiers platted a crown of thorns and put it on his head. And they put on him a purple robe and said, Hail, King of the Jews! And they smote him with their hands. Pilate therefore went forth again and saith unto them, Behold, I bring him forth to you, that ye may know that I find no fault in him. Then came Jesus forth, wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe. And Pilate saith unto them, Behold the man! When the chief priests therefore and officers saw him, they cried out, saying, Crucify him! Crucify him! Pilate saith unto them, Take ye him and crucify him, for I find no fault in him. The Jews answered him, We have a law, and by our law he ought to die, because he made himself the Son of God. When Pilate therefore heard that saying, he was the more afraid, and went again into the judgment hall. Wow, Pilate's really worked up. And saith unto Jesus, Whence art thou? But Jesus gave him no answer. Then saith Pilate unto him, Speakest thou not unto me? Knowest thou not that I have power to crucify thee, and have power to release thee? Jesus answered, Thou couldst have no power at all against me, except it were given thee from above. Therefore he that delivered me unto thee hath the greater sin. And from thenceforth Pilate sought to release him. But the Jews cried out, saying, If thou let this man go, thou art not Caesar's friend. Whosoever maketh himself a king speaketh against Caesar. When Pilate therefore heard that saying, he brought Jesus forth, and sat down in the judgment seat, in a place that is called the Pavement, but in the Hebrew, Gabbatha. And it was the preparation of the Passover, and about the 6th hour. And he saith unto the Jews, Behold your king. But they cried out, Away with him! Away with him! Crucify him! Pilate saith unto them, Shall I crucify your king? The chief priests answered, We have no king but Caesar. Then delivered he him therefore unto them to be crucified. And they took Jesus and led him away. Wow. Yeah, Luke and John, a lot more verbiage. So, if you've seen part one, you probably recognized a lot of similar details, but we also see how liberally they change them. In three of them, an ear is cut off by an unnamed disciple. In one of them, it happens to be Simon Peter, their favorite main disciple. In only one of them does Jesus heal the ear. In all of these versions, it has a lot more to do with the chief priests and the Jews or the Jewry. In all of them, it seems that Pilate, oh, wow, he's really wrestling with this decision. I don't know. The historical Jesus, would there have been a trial? Almost certainly not. What? That's not proof. These are the stories that we have we call them the canonical gospels. There are several other gospels that we also have. Some are just sayings gospels, like the Gospel of Thomas. There's the Gospel of Judas, Gospel of Mary Magdalene. There are other revelations or apocalypses. I think there's an apocalypse of Peter where the cross comes out of the tomb and starts talking to people. But I don't I don't think that any of the gospels really explains why what sometimes they call them the high priests or the scribes and the Pharisees. I don't really see why they would have been so offended by him. He didn't go around calling himself the Son of God. It's always the Son of Man. What does that mean? Nobody knows to this day, even unto this day. Yeah, the Son of Man. What does that mean? You were born? I don't know. The Son of God, if he had ever said that publicly or in a synagogue, he'd be calling himself the Messiah. And that would really whip up some fervor, no doubt. What about Pilate? Well, unless there was really a major disturbance in that temple, things were smashed, and he called himself Son of Man, and they heard it as Son of God. I don't know. But for Pilate, to impose crucifixion, there has to be some threat to power of Rome. I would think. I don't know if we know enough about that. Maybe the high priests were really good at convincing him at a time where he just, whatever. Just don't let things get out of hand during the Passover because this is a time when they likely will. And if you guys say that he called himself the Son of God in the temple and his followers smashed a bunch of pots, well, if they're attacking the temple, they're also attacking the power of Rome. We provide protection to every place where we occupy. There are temple guards, but if there's a big disturbance, the Roman soldiers would go in there, and you wouldn't like that. But I don't know. When Pilate heard of Galilee, yeah. So only in Luke do we have Jesus going over to Herod. So what Jesus Christ Superstar is doing is really what the gospel writers were doing. And we like this, but we're going to add this detail. Let's pick this scene so we can have Herod doing that kind of ragtime song. We'll pick that one, even though it's only in Luke. And which which version of the woman with the oil? Let's use John because that's the only one where Judas complains and it's Mary Magdalene, whereas in the other ones it's just an unnamed woman. So they do that a lot. With the slicing of the ear, three times it's an unnamed disciple. I like it better if it's Peter, so I'm going to make it Peter. In other words, whether they could have been eyewitnesses or not is not the question. It's not written as eyewitness testimony, and it wasn't. Again, the first gospel at the earliest was written almost 40 years later in Greek, which is not what Jesus spoke. A lot of people don't even want to consider that, but when they take on John 3:3, that used to be a banner at a lot of stadiums. Unless ye be born again, okay, but the whole exchange is based on a pun on a word in Greek. But Nicodemus and Jesus spoke Aramaic, so it has to be a story. Oh no, this is my Bible and everything in here is inerrant. Yeah. Who said? Bible doesn't say that. You do. Pastor Jimmy says that or whatever. Yeah, I just watched a really good explanation by C.J. Cornthwaite on how evangelicalism is not the only approach to Christianity. It might make you feel good to think you're on the path of righteousness, and mainline Methodists and Catholics and everybody else, they're all wrong. It's a very hostile way to approach faith, and there's really no basis in it. It's just a modern reaction to some scholarship that started looking at the Bible as possibly mythology. Oh no, no, we're gonna react in the other direction, and every word is either inspired by God or written by God. How does God write a book? And if he writes books, like Sam Harris says, why doesn't he score? Why doesn't he write software or score symphonies? Why can't he do art? He's an author. Oh yeah. Anyway, Pilate and Herod were made friends together. There's a couple of nice guys. And as Dom Crossan would say, it's just historically an absurd idea. First, that there was any tradition where one prisoner has to be released. And also, they were extremely serious about violent insurrection. If he killed somebody and it was seditious, he and every one of his accomplices would have been executed. In a nonviolent insurrection, which is probably what the historical Jesus was accused of, they only executed the leader. That tended to make an impression. So then, what am I saying about the Gospels? There's an historical Jesus. Things got out of hand in the temple. Maybe Judas was threatened himself and he turned on him. Has that ever happened under criminal law, people? Oh, you turned on me, to save his own skin? I don't know. But the only thing that makes sense to me is that he was crucified, he was shocked, just like in Matthew and Mark. My God, why have you forsaken me? The disciples were shocked. Most of the accounts have them just fleeing, and who knows where they go, but I don't blame them either. Crucifixion, whoa. And then they were shocked that this man that they've been following, who keeps saying the kingdom of God is at hand, and Many of you aren't even going to taste death, it's so soon. Whoa, what was this all about? They started telling stories, oral tradition for a few decades, and then some educated Greek writing and Greek speaking intellectuals decided to put it to papyrus, I guess is what they would use, right? Either papyrus or parchment. And the first was Mark. Matthew used that as a source and changed a lot of things, but kept a lot of things too. It's almost more surprising how much he kept. Luke keeps a lot of the same stories and often tells them the same order, but you know, for Matthew and Luke to add an entire birth narrative that was not in Mark, and then for those two to have almost no agreement, shows you that even in the Synoptics, each author is telling the stories of Jesus, just like that hymn. Tell me the stories of Jesus I love to hear. Things I would ask him to tell me if he were here. But to hang on to the eyewitness account, it's silly. They're not eyewitnesses. They wouldn't be writing in Greek if they were. It would all be written in Aramaic. And they get the geography wrong. They change details as we've already seen. But one of the most disturbing things is to varying degrees, they take the blame from Pilate and put it on the Jews. Of course, to be circulating text and preaching doctrine like this at the time, it would probably be a good idea to do that, because the Jews aren't going to do anything to us. We are Jews, aren't we? But to make Pilate look a little better, because they're promoting a religion of someone who was executed as a criminal against Rome. They got to change some things. But a lot of people have taken it way too far. And oh wait, yeah, and this last line, and he released unto them him that for sedition and murder was cast into prison, whom they had desired, but he delivered Jesus to their will. In John, it says they hand him over to the Jews, so they leave no doubt about it. It's the Jews who killed Jesus. Okay, but again, that could also be we don't want to we don't want to enrage the Roman authorities by making it look like Pilate was some type of a bad guy, even though he clearly was. All right, well, these are probably the longest videos I'm going to do. I didn't realize how much verbiage was going to be involved, especially in part two. But if you have a chance, look at part one, part two, try to look at it with an open mind, and I think you will see that there's no reason to think of this as eyewitnesses or people talking to eyewitnesses. It's four gospel authors writing their message of Jesus. Like and subscribe. Please check out Think Again on KDP Amazon. It's available as a paperback, an ebook, or an audiobook.